again, this will be 2 recordings. Let me share my screen. I don't know why when I get disconnected, my slides are disconnected as well. Okay. 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 So yeah, thanks, Lamia. This is actually what we did, is really to think about presenting the material without words, with more like images and three-dimensional objects. Now, the thing that I want to focus on here relates to mental health. And originally, mental health was not part of the study. However, because I was part of another intervention with Palestinian youth from like 10 years ago, and as part of that intervention, we developed what's called the Arab Youth Mental Health Scale. It's a 21-item scale. And so I thought, okay, so since this scale is available and it's been validated and it's been used with refugee children, why not use it? And it was validated and it had good results with girls specifically. Why not use it here? And it was just, it was not part of the logic frame, but I included it. What happened is that it actually turned out to be, for me at least, one of the most illuminating things that we did, because we discovered that in fact asking questions on sexual reproductive health was very difficult, because most of the girls really didn't know what we were talking about, and we didn't get valid or good answers for these questions on SRH. But we actually had like sort of like not an epiphany, but more like, wow, what is happening with these girls when it comes to mental health? We found out that mental health was a big issue in this adolescent population. 30% had poor mental health according to the mental health scale. Mahmoud, I will ask you now. And then 36% of the girls, there's one question in that scale that asks, in the last week, did you have any thoughts about death? And 36% of the girls said yes, somewhat agree or strongly agree. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about this now, but Mahmoud, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, because I tried to search the literature about a phenomenon called knowledge resistance. My point here is, when you are entering these communities, being an outsider is a big factor for these people, especially if you are doing an interventional study or trying to do something like implementing a new thing in this community. Sometimes the resistance is not for the message you are delivering, like sexual education or reproductive health, but rather to the educator or the teacher or the researcher himself or herself. So this has been cautioned in several studies, saying that whenever you have an outsider, exploring the phenomenon and intervening against it might not be as effective as compared to somebody from inside, an influencer person from the same community, person speaking the same language or the same dialect or of the same gender even. This is very important to consider in these studies.
Yeah, yeah. The pilot intervention that we did was implemented by Syrian community workers from the same community. The actual intervention, the plan for the actual intervention was to implement it by like Syrian 18 to 21-year-old Syrian youth, who were, most of them were attending college or university. So we thought they would be like good role models and mentors, and young youth, female, mostly, not mostly, all of. I mean, we had 2 males, but the idea was the males were going to work with men, but the females were going to work with the girls. So yes. On the other hand, Zaina, just one second. On the other hand, there's also the social desirability bias that where, you know, if you're doing research on early marriage, then the community will say, oh yes, we know early marriage is bad, we don't want it, but you know, we are forced to marry our daughters. But then as you spend more time in the community, you know, at least for me, I start to doubt whether they really believe that early marriage is bad. Maybe they don't see that it's bad. I mean, really, the health outcomes are not that bad when the girl is 16 and 17 when she gets married. And early marriage brings a lot of happiness in some contexts. It's not this idea that the girl is forced against. Of course, these things happen. These situations happen, but in some cases, the girl wants to get married. It's you know. So the community may not see early marriage the same way we see it, but they go along with us, and they say, yes, early marriage is bad. It's not good for girls. We don't want it. However, because of the economic conditions, we are obliged to accept a marriage proposal if the guy works. And then, you know, we end up finding out that at least in this baseline that we did, we found out that the married girls were not doing well at all. You know, they were complaining about poverty and unemployment. They themselves were working in agriculture, and at that time, because we did the baseline in January, February, it was snowing and extremely cold. They were not working. They were also not feeling well at all in terms of mental health, in terms of worry about economic conditions. Yeah. Zaina, go ahead.
Yes, doctor, I have a question. I'm just curious whether these girls and do they look like they are sad or not well, or only when you explored and asked the questions? Because I've seen a lot of refugee children. They seem very happy and they go and play together. And I just wonder if do they
Hmm.
look also sad?
I mean, it depends. Some girls, like I did some, because I used to go to Baqa, and I would see the girls who score high on the mental health scale, or girls who say that they have thoughts about death, because we had a protocol that we needed to follow. And I would speak to some girls, and some girls would start crying, and some girls were in real distress. Other girls were not. But let me tell you, so the thoughts about death, yes, I mean, the girl, an 11-year-old having thoughts about death is something that you need to check on. Okay, so we did find that a lot of the girls are afraid of death. And partly because they have experienced death, not them, you know, they've seen a loved one die. Some of the girls have been told stories about death because of the war, absolutely. And and sometimes the death is like a neighbor or a child, for example. You know, a girl would say, "Oh, there was a child who died," and everybody was sad. And yeah. So fear of death, and then, but then there were girls who said, "I wish I was dead." Okay, but when they were asked, "What do you mean by that?" They didn't, in fact, uh, try anything. They didn't engage in any actions to harm themselves. But they would say, "I wish I was dead because I'm not happy, because you know, I don't go to school. I do all the housework. I have problems with you know, I don't want to live with my father. I don't, you know, family conflict, living in crowded conditions, not going to school, or even if going to school, not having space, not, you know, to study. I can't study at home." We also had a couple of cases of 14 and 15-year-old girls who were in romantic relationships and who wanted to wish to be dead because the romantic relationship didn't work out at this young age, you know, this drama. And then we had actually a few girls who actually attempted self-harm. And we had this situation where girls would cut themselves with a blade, but would cut themselves in a place that was not visible. As you know, most of the girls actually in this age were hajjabat, wore the hijab and wore long sleeves. And this was winter as well. So they would cut themselves, but nobody would know or see. Okay. And then, this was very worrying for us. And we immediately would call, either Himaya or Embrace or any of the NGOs. And then I didn't have a strong background in mental health, but now I've read quite a bit on something called non-suicidal injury, which a lot of the adolescents engage in. And it's a mental health disorder. And in some cases, the adolescents engage in this to get attention. But in other cases, the adolescents do it and they hide it. They don't want anybody to see it. And the idea is that like physical pain sometimes covers emotional pain and makes the adolescent would like forget the emotional pain for some time when they inflict physical pain on themselves. Now, of course, it's not whether it's suicidal or non-suicidal. If it's non-suicidal, it doesn't mean that we should relax, because we're talking about girls who didn't take biology, who don't, like, with low literacy. So cutting themselves in the wrong place, everything is the wrong place, but cutting themselves near an artery, for example, is very dangerous, even if they didn't intend to harm themselves. So anyways, this is an issue that from our experience and observation, that adults or parents are not aware of that is happening, particularly this self-harm of cutting. They're not aware of it. And so this is something to incorporate into the intervention as part of an implementation research, at least with the mothers here. So anyways, I told you about the intervention, but I didn't bring all the pieces together. The idea here is that is really to start to think about early marriage as part of a syndemic that's impacting adolescent girls in particular, who are refugees. And the idea is that this lack of access to education, early marriage, and mental health are things that happen together in a displacement setting among refugees, where sometimes early marriage contributes to poor mental health. And in other times, early marriage may be seen by the girl as a solution to poor mental health, or at least to the structural conditions that promote poor mental health. And then, without addressing mental health and the poor conditions, the structural conditions that lead to mental health, I'm not sure how successful intervention programs to reduce early marriage would be. Yeah. So, okay. So this non-suicidal cuts specifically only during the Civil War and the Israeli invasion, Fatima. It's not something that happens all the time.
No, I haven't seen it recently in any girl around us, but they've been talking that they did so during the war because of stress and poverty and the death that they witnessed.
Sure. As a kind of control. Yeah. So it's sort of like the adolescent wanting to be in control of their emotions, and so inflicting physical pain through cutting is something that gives them that feeling. Yeah. Okay.
Doctor, very often they categorize it as a coping mechanism. Some people will drink, other are going to be violent, or other will have heightened anxiety. Every one of us can experience it with different. Will have a coping mechanism different, not.
Yeah, absolutely. And these adolescents, I mean, adolescents in general experience so much pressure. So imagine adolescents who are girls and who are refugees, and in conditions where their mobility is extremely constrained. They live in poverty. They're, you know, they really don't have control, and you know, they're not really in control of where they sleep, where they live, what they eat, whether they can go out or not. They don't have the respite of going to school, for example, and spending a few hours with other girls their age. They're under tremendous, really, conditions that lead to poor health, poor mental health, absolutely. So here, it's not that I'm cynical, not at all, but the issue is that I started to question, you know, then how do you work on sexual reproductive health under these conditions when, I mean, when mental health is manifesting in this way because of the structural conditions under which these girls live. Isaac, I have a sister who got married early because in our household we were very poor. After I finished school, I started supporting my siblings, and she later left her marriage. She is now a university student. Oh, great, great. That's a good story, Isaac. Yes, the other thing is also these young marriages oftentimes end with abandonment, not necessarily divorce, but abandonment. Oftentimes these marriages are not even legally registered. So when the girl is abandoned, then she's not even divorced. She doesn't even have like legal right. Okay, again, the reason why these marriages are not registered is that they're registered by a sheikh, a local sheikh. However, because registering the marriage in the court would require that that the bride and the groom present like documentation of residency, then this never takes place. So the marriage is only like, there's only a signature of a sheikh, but then it's really from the point of view of the Lebanese government or any legal entity, this is not considered a marriage. So the girl here is also in a very weak legal position when it comes to her rights if she's abandoned. Yeah, okay. Just to go back to the point that Mahmoud mentioned about knowledge resistance, we actually also discover over time that some of the people that we talked with and who said that yes, early marriage is bad, we need to work against it, we discover later on that their daughter married at age 15 or 16. We have this situation right now where we have someone we know who was working with us and her daughter is 16 and getting married, I think next week. So it's a different also, that's the difference between what people say and the knowledge and then actually what ends up happening in reality because of the structure. Yeah, Mahmoud.
I just wanted to add, when they tell you that we are happy, we have been doing this for a long time, and my daughter is happy, this is the type of confirmation bias where they are confirming their own statement, regardless of whether it's negative or positive in terms of the outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yes. So this is basically the syndemic. The RIMA syndemic here is poor mental health and early marriage, and the fundamental cause of displacement and poverty and patriarchy. It's really important to always talk about patriarchy. It's not only about displacement and poverty, because and this is uncomfortable for many people to talk about, but I think yeah, it cannot be ignored. Okay. Yeah. Sure. So this idea that education doesn't buy you much if you're not allowed to work later on. Absolutely. Yeah. So early marriage among Palestinian refugees in Lebanon is much lower than among Syrian refugees. it's higher than Lebanese. It's slightly higher than Lebanese, but it's much lower than Syrians. And early marriage among Lebanese is low, much lower than Jordan, Syria. And it's more in pockets, certain pockets. It's not dispersed. Okay, so we're done here. We're over time actually, and I didn't.
Sir?
Yes.
Just a quick question. Is that because no?
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear it.
Even like the Syrian crisis is maybe I can't hear you.
Can you repeat that, please, Dana?
I was saying maybe the percentage is lower among the Palestinians. Is it because they've been in Lebanon for so long and they're more stable? However, the Syrian crisis is recent. Like it's pushing Syrians to marry. Like.
Yeah, that might be one of the reasons that because Palestinians have been in Lebanon for definitely much longer, so they converged in terms of their early marriage rates. But also early marriage in Palestine has been decreasing as well, much more than in Syria. Yeah.
Doctor?
Yes.
Did you had the chance to check the correlation between early marriage and fear in different country? When there is war, there is fear, and when there is fear, there is a need of some stability, because marriage on anthropology signify stability and security. So,
Yes. This is what the community says, is that there's lack of security and they are afraid of sexual harassment.
Exactly.
Yes, so sexual harassment. And the idea is once a girl is married, then there are a lot more social inhibitions.
Yeah. There is protection. There is a protection.
Right.
Like the husband is protecting the girl.
Yeah. So that's the idea, is that even the older women say, even if the 15-year-old marries an 18-year-old, that's protection for her, protection from harassment, and basically also economic protection. The idea is that it's economic protection. I'm not sure about economic protection, because a lot of the early married girls we spoke about poverty. And some of them said that things were better for her before she got married, when she was in her parents' house. But the sexual harassment is a real issue here. And I mean, also the sexual harassment is both internal and external. I mean, the community mainly talks about sexual harassment outside in Lebanese society, not only sexual, but harassment in general, stigma and harassment. But then also there is sexual harassment inside the community. And that speaks also to the disruption of social norms as well, that I'm not sure, I mean, like in displacement settings, maybe young men become less inhibited and engage more in sexual harassment. I'm not very familiar with
and the crowded, they live in crowded, because we had the same problem in Algeria. We had for 10 years terrorism, so we had a lot of displacement, internal displacement, and we were seeing early marriage increasing, and sexual harassment, but inside the house, not just outside, because the houses were crowded. You will find more than 20 people in the same house. It was craziness, because they were fleeing the danger.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's about the disruption of social norms, and the disempowerment of young girls as well. and their vulnerability to sexual harassment. This is what the mothers spoke about a lot. But to be honest, when we asked the girls whether they've been subjected to harassment, the majority said no. But again, here, maybe because they're not sensitive to it, they're oblivious. Maybe they've been harassed, but at a young age, they didn't think it was harassment.
They are not aware. When they
Maybe,
are young,
yeah.
they are not aware. They don't understand. Sometimes they have fear, but they don't understand why. And it's end up when they grown up, sometimes they have even some PTSD about that. But when
Yeah.
they are young, they don't really understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at a young age, I think the girls are not sensitive or attuned to understand sexual harassment. Yeah. Okay, we're really over time. So thank you so much. What do we have to? I didn't prepare anything related to tea or coffee, but really next time we have to have something about coffee. So if anybody would like to share, if anybody has like a, I don't know, trivia or like an interesting type of coffee or tea that you would like to share tomorrow, not tomorrow, I'm sorry, next week, please let me know. We can do that. Okay. Okay, so those of you who didn't send me a topic or a theory, do send it to me in an email. Even if you mentioned it here, I don't remember in the chat. Send it to me. And then for next time will be the last time we meet. No, we have 2 more meetings, but next time we will have more of like a new theory. And then the last time we meet, okay, great, Mahmoud, if you have something about coffee or tea. And then 2 weeks from now, I would like us to think more about values and ethics and health promotion. So we go back a little bit, go back to basics and not talk too much about theory, but more about values and ethics with some examples. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I'll see you then soon. Bye.